Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Lori Wisper and Don Delves of Towers Watson and Mark Simpson from Texas Roadhouse, and we're talking about pay for performance. First, talk about the differences in pay for performance between executives and your general employee base.
Well, I'll start by talking about executive compensation. And Lori and I have been working on trying to connect the dots between executive pay and employee compensation. Partly because executive compensation has improved dramatically over the last 10 to 20 years in terms of paying for performance. Executive compensation, while significantly high and much higher than employee pay, is very much tied to performance. Executives are paid for the value that they help create for the company. They're paid for financial performance in a whole bunch of different ways. They're paid for team performance or performance of business units, and they're paid for individual performance. And they're paid pretty well for all four, and their pay moves up and down significantly with performance. And that's frankly much, much better than it used to be.
And where Don and I started to talk about this was just that, where he explained to me all the good things that have happened in the pay for performance arena for executives. We really started to talk about why are people still sort of angry, if you will, gets a lot of press, as to why executive pay is so much higher. And his original hypothesis was that it isn't that executive pay is too high, it's that the broad-based employee population is paid too low. And what we came to is they're really not paid too low from an amount standpoint, but they're not being paid for performance in the same way that executives are. And we started to go down this path and realize that there's probably things that we could do on the broad-based employee side that's been done on the executive side that would improve things not only just for employee pay for performance itself, but in a way that aligns them both. And wouldn't that be kind of cool to do? And so some of the things that Don talked about that executives are paid for, and some of the guiding principles that we use with executive pay for performance, it's our supposition that we should be using those very same things for employee pay for performance.
Are there any trends in employee earnings that have contributed to this sort of inequality between employees and executives?
Yes, absolutely. So the way that it's portrayed in the press is that employee earnings have stagnated or maybe even declined relative to productivity. And the fact is they have stagnated. From a cash pay perspective, from an employer cost of labor perspective, however, they haven't. So when you think about the cost of healthcare and how it's really skyrocketed in the last 30, 40 years, that's taken a big chunk for employers to keep up with in terms of the cost of labor. Unfortunately, that is not seen by employees as a way to pay for performance. They see it as, an entitlement. And so that additional costs that employers are having to incur, they don't really get much credit for, right, when it comes to pay for performance. Having said all that too, when we look at how salary budgets have been constructed through the years, they've gone down. And they've gone down significantly, especially with this last recession. In fact, many companies in 2009 and 2010 had no salary budget because of the economics. And so, if that's their primary, many employers would say that's their primary way that they pay for performance. How do you do that when you have no money? So, what people are feeling, the frustration that they feel is real.
In terms of the trends you mentioned with the downward trends in salary budget figures, has the trend or the decline been similar in the executive space with regards to pay for performance, or has that
The salary budgets for executives have gone down in a similar fashion. But here's the crux. That is not the primary way that we pay for performance on the executive side. As Don would tell you, it's much more stock and cash based on the incentive side. I'll let you speak to that.
So yeah, I mean, merit increases for executives have also come down, but the amount that we devote to annual incentives and long-term incentives has gradually gone up. And it's, for CEOs, it's the bulk of how they're paid. And actually for the whole executive team, it's the dominant part of the pay package. So yeah, those may go up and down, but they go up and down a lot with stock performance and financial performance.
And, I think from our perspective for Texas Roadhouse, you do want your executives to be, incentivized to grow the company's value, which is the shareholder value. So I think that's a good thing. One thing we've really tried to do is figure out how to incentivize our line level managers, our store managers. We call them managing partners, and they're really incentivized based on short-term, bonuses or incentives based on the profits of their store. And so that really, as they grow their sales and grow their business, grow their profits, they're growing their income. At the same time, the company's winning because we're growing shareholder value because we're delivering more profit. So that's one of the things we've really tried to do is align that, and really everyone within the organization from a management perspective in the field and or even in our support center, our corporate headquarters, or take part in profit sharing of some sort. So we're all kind of aligned when it comes to driving, at the end of the day, the shareholder value, because if you're driving it through sales and profits, then eventually it's going to turn and create more value for your shareholders, which is what the executives are going to be compensated off of.
So how does an organization then optimize pay for performance across the entire employee base?
So what we like to talk about is looking very closely at how we define performance, right? I think that we take it for granted that we know what we mean when we say performance in the pay for performance equation. And when you stop and think about it, and I've asked clients that I've worked with this, we kind of don't. We don't take a lot of time and consideration to define it. And it has many layers, right? It's a complicated thing. So taking the time to delayer it is valuable, we think. And because if you do that, where you're more narrowly defining the different layers of performance, we think you can come up with some really effective and even creative ways to pay for it. And they've done this a bit on the executive compensation side, right? They talk about, okay, what do we want to use to pay for long-term performance? Oh, stock works great for that, right? What should the short-term incentive plan pay for relative to that, definition of performance? And we don't think of it that way on the broad-based side. We kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink into this definition of performance. It can be competencies, it can be how you do your job, it can be the goals that we give you for the year, and then we ask the manager to come up with one rating that grades it all, and then we use that to make a pay decision. So, if we can dissect the different elements of performance, we can then maybe even broaden how, the things we use to pay for it and give managers more tools than just either a merit increase or, if they're lucky, a short-term incentive plan to pay for it.
So, Mark, can you talk a little bit about how you've had success at Texas Roadhouse achieving some of these results?
Well, I think we've had a lot of success as an organization, and it's mainly because of our managing partner program, because truly our restaurant operators, our managing partners, share in the profits of the store they actually run. So they get a base salary, and they have monthly bonuses, short-term incentives, and the short-term incentives are the majority of their income. So we've incentivized them to grow their business, their individual business, and we have many individual businesses across the country that all add up to a corporation growing sales and revenues and hopefully profits as well. So we've incentivized them from a short-term perspective, from basically a monthly bonus plan where they're getting 10% of the profits of their restaurant, and on top of it, they're also getting stock based on the profits of their store as well. So a little bit more of a long-term incentive, and they know that as a restaurant operator, the only way they can grow their income is to grow sales. So long-term, you can cheat if you want, but it's not going to help you long-term grow your income. You have to grow sales. And everything we do is measurable. So everything is measurable, whether it's sales, guest count, guests per hour, food costs, labor costs, liquor cost, everything we do is measurable. So we really know where everyone stands, and it's very easy for us to provide tools and help them improve in those areas, which will thus drive their income and again help the company grow and help our shareholders as well.
So back to Lori's point about defining performance, it sounds like you've gone through that effort with your store managers and or restaurant managers and making sure that those measurable results are actually capturing that performance that you've identified as critical to the business's success.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that Texas Roadhouse does is they go to great lengths to educate and train their managing partners, even to the extent of hiring them in a year in advance of a restaurant opening. So they do that investment of hiring them a year in advance to train and educate them. And when Don and I have looked at it, it's like, what is the one thing that we can control that separates the broad-based employee population from executives in terms of shortening the line of sight between what you do and the end performance? It's information, right? Access to information, education around how the business works. That is what works for Texas Roadhouse. They're able to make their managing partners into like mini CEOs of their restaurants, right? Where they're giving them both the business acumen and the education to understand how to run the business.
Which would kind of be our goal, is really for them to own their community and drive the results in their community. But the education piece, I think, is in I guess communicating more so than educating, but communication is really the key. And so, every year we do a fall tour where our CEO, our president, our head of operations go to 20 to 25 cities, and every single managing partner comes in to meet with them. And it's, how's the business doing? Where are we going? What do we see as potential roadblocks for us as a business? And then on top of that, it's also a town hall. It's, hey, managing partners, what are we doing well? And by the way, what are we not doing well? What can we help you with? And so I think education is the key. We have, out of probably 600 or so people in what most companies would term middle management, I'm not sure what we would term it, but most companies would term middle management. We have about 600 people. We've got 350 insiders. So we really do share information. And for a company our size, I think we were talking earlier, and Don probably said that maybe most companies our size that have 20 insiders, we have 350. And we do grant stock at many, many levels in the organization, from folks in our support center to our kitchen managers and service managers in the field.
And the kitchen managers, so it's not just the store manager that is educated and paid on the profit of the store.
Correct.
It's the kitchen manager, service manager,
Absolutely.
meat cutters,
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like that probably delivers great line of sight, which you hear so much about when you talk about pay for performance. Thank you all.
Thank you.
For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.